one of the biggest things with rational expressions is factoring. And a lot of people have some issues with factoring. So we're going to start with these 7 for factoring. So we're going to start with number 1. Okay, we've got 6x plus 3. So the first thing we're going to do is say, what does 6 and 3 both have in common? Nope. Or an answer key or anything. Nope. 2 for each is fine. Yeah. So what does 6 and 3 both have in common? What could I take out of it? Ethan, you paying attention? 3, right? Our phones are down, right? We're listening to me. We have at least one headphone off so we can hear me. Okay. So we get 2x plus 1. That's what we mean by factoring. We're going to take out the greatest common factor. If you guys can fit these answers right in here on this small little sheet, that's fine. My handwriting's too big. You could do this in your notebook. You could get extra paper, whatever you want. All right, let's talk about number 2. Number 2, we've got 24x squared minus 8x. So we're going to take out what 24 and 8 have in common. So the first thing I notice is that they're both even. So I know 2 will come out of there. So I know 4 will come out. Well, anything bigger than 4. 6 goes into 24, but it doesn't go into 8. What about 8? Does 8 go into 24 evenly? Yeah, it goes in there 3 times, right? So I'm going to say 8. 8 times 24 is 3. Ooh, look, they both have an x in common. So let's pull an x out. 8x times 3 gives me 24x, so I need to put another x there. 8x, how am I going to get that to negative 8x? I'm going to put a minus 1. Let's look at number 3. We've got 6x minus 12. What do both 6x and 12 have in common? They have a 6, so let's take out a 6. 6 times what gives me 6x? Just x. 6 times what gives me negative 12? Negative 2. Okay. We feeling pretty good about these? Let's keep going. Let's look at number 4. We've got 2x squared plus 8x. So we're going to pull out a 2. We're going to pull out an x. So far, so good? So what am I going to have left over in the inside? You won't have x squared because x times x is x squared, right? X plus 4. Good. Okay. Moving right along. 5. 4x plus 10. What do 4 and 10 have in common? 2. So I'm going to take out a 2. And I'm going to be left with, I shouldn't be hearing your music because you shouldn't be playing it this loud. Because you shouldn't be playing music at all, really. You should just be listening and writing this down. 2 times what gives me 4x? 2 what? 2x. 2 times what gives me 10? 5. Okay, let's try the next 2. 6, we've got 10x squared plus 35x. What do both 10 and 35 have in common? 5. Do they both have an x? So I could take out an x. 5x times what gives me 10x squared? 2x, good. 5x times what gives me 35x? 7. So far, so good? Okay, moving on to 7 then. We've got 10x squared y minus 15xy squared. Let's look at just the numbers first because it looks kind of big. What does 10 and 15, what goes into both of those evenly? 5. So let's take out the 5. Do they have any letters in common? You can take an x and a y, right? Okay, 5xy times what gives me 10x squared y? 2x, right? Because I want to have another x. And now we have to have a minus, right? Because we need to make it negative. 5xy times what gives me 15xy squared? Not 3x, 3y, right? So far, so good? Okay. All right. Let's move on to where it says factoring the difference of two squares. And we're just going to do, I don't know, 2 or 3 from this part. I'm going to just do 2 or 3 from this part. So I'm just going to move this over. We're going to do number 1 under the third. So under the third thing where it says factoring, we're just going to try number 1 out. Number 1 says x squared minus 1. Okay, so if we were making that whole Punnett square thing, we know this is x squared. We know this is negative 1. We know x times x is x squared. What times what gives us 1? 1, right? But does one of them have to be positive and one have to be negative so I can get a negative answer? Yeah. So we'll make 1 negative, 1 positive. But look, 1x and negative 1x, does that give me 0? So I want you to notice if it's the difference of two squares, we're always going to end up with 1 is minus and 1 is plus. Let's try another one and then I'll have you guys do one on your own. Here we've got x squared minus 9. So without doing the whole little Punnett square thing, what am I going to get? X. What is the square root of 9? 3. So I've got, and since it's negative, that means 1 is positive and 1 is negative. Okay, I want you guys to try number 4. X squared minus 25. You try it right now. What do you get? X squared minus 25. Okay, what'd you guys get? X minus 5, x plus 5. Good. Good. Okay. Let's try this one. Let's try number 13. Shh. I'm going to put bigger numbers in front, but it shouldn't really change it. 36m squared minus 121. Okay. So let's think about that. What's the square root of 36? What times what gives me 36? Good. So I've got 6m, and I'm going to have 6m. What's the square root of 121? 11. So one's got to be positive, one's got to be negative. All right, why don't you guys try number 15? Never mind. Let's try one more together, and then I'll have you guys try that one. Number 3. Number 3 says x squared plus 4. X squared plus 4. How am I going to get that plus 4? If I've got x plus 2 times x plus 2, let's look at that. What's x times x? Plus 2x plus 2x plus 4, that gives me x squared plus 4x plus 4. So if it has a plus in the inside, you can't factor it. It's not going to work. Okay. Let's try something a little bit harder. Let's move to let's try on the back under 4, let's try 1. We've got x squared plus 8x plus 16. I don't think this is showing up too well. Let's try this. X squared plus 8x plus 16. Okay, so this is where I want to pull out the Punnett square again. I like putting x squared right here. I like putting 16. What two numbers multiply to give us x squared? X and x. What two numbers multiply to give us 16? We've got 1 and 16. What else? 2 and 8 and 4 and 4, right? Which one of those adds to give us 8? 4 and 4. 4x, 4x. Those add to give us 8. So I've got x plus 4 times x plus 4. Okay? All right. Let's take a break from this so you can put this worksheet to the side. I am going to have you try a couple of these each day as we're practicing. But let's try a different problem that's going to look like your homework for today. Let's try x plus 6 over x squared plus 5x minus 6. Okay. X plus 6, can I simplify that in any way? Or is that just going to be x plus 6? So we just got x plus 6 on the top. Okay, now we're looking at the bottom. So that's when I pull out my Punnett square again. I know negative 6 is going to go right here.
X plus 6 over negative 4 x.
What? I know I've got x squared right here. What two numbers, when I multiply them together, or letters, gives me x squared? X and x, right? What two things, when I multiply them together, gives me negative 6? I've got 1 and negative 6, right? What else? 1, negative 1 and 6. 2 and negative 3, 3, negative 2 and 3, right? Which one of those, when I add them together, is going to give me a positive 5? It's got to be negative 1 and 6, right? It's the only one that, when I add it together, gives me negative 5. So I get negative 1x, positive 6x. They add together to give me 5. So that means on the bottom, I'm going to get x plus 6 and x minus 1. These cancel. The x plus 6 is canceled, and I get 1 over x minus 1 is my final answer. That's what your homework is going to be like tonight. Okay? I'm going to start to do a little bit more factoring. Okay? Do we want, let's try one more, and then I'll let you guys work on your homework, okay? Let's try one more. Let's try a little bit of a complicated one. Let's try x squared plus 3x minus 28 over x squared minus 49. All right. So this one, I think we're going to be able to factor the top and the bottom. So let's just look at the top first. So we know we've got that Punnett square. We've got x squared here and negative 28 here. Let's think of all the things we can multiply to give us 28. I've got 1 and 28, 2 and 14, 4 and 7, and that's it, I think. Which ones, when I add them together, could give me a positive 3? What if I had negative 4 and positive 7? Those give me a positive 3 when I add them together, right? Okay. So I'm going to say we've got x and x. We've got negative 4, positive 7. That gives me a positive 3. So we've got x minus 4, x plus 7. Now let's look at the bottom. We've got x squared minus 49. Are those both perfect squares? Remember our shortcut. Then that's x minus 7 x plus 7. Okay? That's our shortcut. We just do the square root of both, make one positive, one negative. We cross out the x plus 7s, and we're just left with x minus 4 over x minus 7. That's the simplest form. So let me ask you guys this question. What can it not be on the bottom? What can x not be? 1 minus 7 is 6, so we're good. I cannot have a 0 on the bottom. When would it be a 0 on the bottom? When I plugged in what number? 7. So x can't be 7. Does that make sense? You can't. Can we ever divide anything by 0? No. So we cannot have a 0 on the bottom. You guys ready to work on your homework for the rest of the hour?
Yep.
Does that sound good? Okay, this is due tomorrow. So get started.